Hello everyone. So with another set on the horizon, another tier list is in order. This tier list is just a continuation of my EX6 tier list. I am going to do a little edit to it, and I'll explain why. Some decks didn't perform, some decks performed better than I expected, and we're just going to carry over from them. I also forgot a couple decks by accident. It's kind of weird because one of them is 7 Demon Lords, considering that is the EX6 deck. But yeah, I'm going to go through, edit things. These are just predictions. So, things could be totally wrong, but it's just taking the knowledge of my practice, my testing, and also Japan results. So without further ado, let's get on into it. First, I'm going to rate Angels and Demon Lords. I actually think Demon Lords is actually pretty good. It's either the top of tier 2 or the bottom of tier 1.5. The main problem with Demon Lords is the same thing as Royal Knights, is it's just kind of slow. And it also depends on if you run the one of Yggdrasil, which kind of changes your game plan a lot. It also depends on the deck you're playing. I feel like Demon Lords actually has a wide range of effects to deal with almost anything. However, since Numemon is still the big diff in the meta, not much you can do if you're slightly slower than optimal. Next is Angels. I think it's a solid tier 2 deck as well. Usually you run the Patamon vaccine engine. However, your top end becomes aces. So it does kind of definitely hurt if you don't get into that Diminimon. You have to go into one of your level 6 aces, and you have a level 5 ace underneath, because then you're giving the enemy, close to 9 memory for a delete. So those are the two EX6 decks. What we're going to do is now we're going to shift the tier list appropriately. So first, Magnamon is going to be brought down. Mirage is going to be brought down. Hybrid's going to be brought down. Tyrant's going to be brought down. Rapid's going to be brought down. And a lot of these shifts are based on mainly BT16 decks as a whole. Magnamon and Numemon kind of still just cock block a lot of decks from existing. That kind of changes a little bit in BT17, luckily, since we get more deck support and hybrids have a couple ways to deal with them. But, that's pretty much it. And some decks are shifting up. I'm actually going to bring Diaboromon up. I'm actually going to bring Shroudmon up to tier 3. I'm going to bring Gallantmon up above the top of tier 3. Not above tier 3, but at the top of tier 3. I'll move Machine up like one slot just to make all the Machine players happy, because, oh my god, we have a new Chaosdramon. We get to eat everyone else's support. The reason I'm bringing Diaboromon support up is because the new level 6 that it gets with redirects, plus the level 6 it got in EX6, are actually very, very good additions. As well as having access to black. Black is actually a very strong color, especially since D-Digivolve is one of the strongest removals right now, since almost every other thing is denied, especially with Imperial Dramon getting a buff again. I don't think it's moving. I don't think Imperial is moving anywhere. I don't think Paladin mode is enough to shake it. However, I do want to keep a close eye on the new option. It's 2-cost option, since it does provide the protection from the last thing Imperial suffers from, which is battle. Mirage is still Mirage. I think it's an insane deck. It also has the unblockable, which gets around Magnamon. And I brought Magnamon down, which is mono blue, because it hasn't really been putting a lot of results lately. It still performs in Japan. However, their meta is completely different. Magnamon hasn't really moved a little bit. Their results in Japan are a little bit different than ours, but here it's not really doing anything. Imperial, I think, has more tops than Magnamon does, which is saying something. A couple things are moving up, so I am going to be moving Dexdoru up for BT17. Its new support is exactly what it needs. It gives it more protection from deletion, since that is the one thing it suffers from, since Doraemon gives it protection from everything else. It also gives you very good... Collision is a very good removal tool, because most decks don't have battle protection, right? Even Imperial Dramon was suffering from it until this new set. Magnamon, most of the time Doru is going to be bigger, and you're going to be popping Tamers, so it kind of lessens the load of, red hybrid and blue hybrid and things like that. I'm just going to take a quick look over my list to make sure I have it all where I want it to be. And if I make any changes, I'll let you guys know. So one thing I have thought about while I was revising this tier list and the break and the little cut I just did was I'm actually going to bring Ragna up solely because it's put up a result so far. Yuxo in EU won a regionals with it, and obviously he is a phenomenal player. He tops very consistently, and you have to be really good. And it also has very specific deck building preferences that you have to go with, and you have to know matchups. But I think Ragnar Lordmon actually is the better of the level 6, the top end of DNA. You know, Mastamon and Examon are the other two. Examon being non-existent and Mastamon being down. Where is she? Right here. So yeah, there are a couple decks that get support. You know, Terrier gets more support, Luga gets more support, Shroudmon gets more support, things like that. I don't really think they move. I think they stay true to what their deck wants to do. Like Luga, cool, you have another avenue to OTK. This time you're on a level 7 killing me instead of a level 6. This time you get to, you know, DP minus me instead of run me over or just straight up delete me. So it's kind of like that. I'm tempted to move certain things down, such as Beals and Jesmon and Brigadra, simply because they are never played, and they also suffer very highly from the types of removal that's in the top of the metagame, like 1.5 and 1. And just to go over it real quickly, obviously Numemon is staying in the number 1 spot. I'm actually tempted to remove Patamon and Vaccine Armor down. I'm actually tempted to put him in tier 2 for this meta, just because I've noticed a lot of Patamon players and a lot of Vaccine players, you know, do all these shenanigans, you know, gain a bunch of memories, recover a bunch of cards, and then what? And then they stare at you. So they need a better game finisher, in my opinion. I do think Patamon and Emissary are still toxic cards for the game, but they're not putting up results. They're not doing anything. I think the cards are worse overall now. But that's enough talking about EX6 and below. Let's go ahead and get into the new stuff. So first up, we have Red Hybrid. So I am going to leave Emperor Red Hybrid here. I'm going to bring Ancient up above him. Red Hybrid is probably going to be up here. Red Hybrid has this issue where, since it's red, its only form of removal is deletion. Well, guess what? Most decks have protection against that. However, if you're Magnamon and you're like, oh, I'm just going to block, well, I would love to see you try blocking my 20k Ancient that's coming in for 3 checks. So if you don't block, I'm going to chunk your life. If you do block, I'm going to kill your thing. I'm going to blow myself up, play more hybrids, and get more pieces back. So it also has the addition of running Crimson Blaze, which knocks out a lot of decks below it, you know, playing things by effects. So I think it's a solid spot. Blue Hybrid, I actually think is going to be close to the top. Blue Hybrid has proven to be an insane deck. It has bouncing capabilities, it cannot be blocked, it can have jamming, its line is very consistent, tons of draw power, and it has yellow. This is the main thing. Since it has access to yellow in its level 5 slot, that allows it to flex, right? It allows it to run Venus, it allows it to run Valkyrie, it allows it to run more control pieces if it needs to. However, Blue and Red Hybrid have a favorable part of their tempo where they don't play the board, right? You're going to Evo onto your Hybrid, you're going to do your damage, and then you're going to blow yourself up to play another Tamer. The reason this is good is because a lot of decks get value out of killing your things, right? So without being able to kill anything, you can't really do anything. I do think Dexdoru is going to be an issue for it, just because it's going to be running in and popping Tamers, and most of the time Blue Hybrid does not leave suspended Tamers, so the unsuspended Tamers are going to get popped. Sakuyamon, sadly, I don't expect anything special. You're a tier 3 or you're a locals warrior. I don't think anything's going to happen with this deck, so I don't think there's much to say. Argamon, I think, is the exact same, tier 3 or locals warrior. It's cool, it's funny. I'm sure there's some green shenanigans you can do, but without scrambles and without also a lot of the LM3, LM4 cards, we're not really doing anything with it. Eosmon, I think Eosmon is actually pretty good. However, you know, everything below tier 2 has the issue of not being able to deal with 1 or tier 1.5. So that is pretty much the tier list. I think I'm going to refine it just a little bit and then get back to you guys and then explain my changes afterwards. So you're back. All right, guys. So the changes I have made is I moved 3 decks into Locals Warrior, which is Sakuya, Argo, and Shroudmon, or just Pulsemon, whatever you want to call it. I moved Emperor and Tyrant down to tier 3. I don't see them doing anything, especially with this better version of Red Hybrid. I think Tyrant's just too slow in today's meta. And I just want everyone to keep in mind, tier 2 does not mean you cannot win an event with it. It means it is less likely and you need matchup knowledge and you need luck. The game is based around luck. I'm sorry to say it, but to win a regionals, you have to be slightly lucky or just a god. So, or both. So tier 2 does not mean your deck cannot win at regionals. It just means it is a harder time to win versus 1.5 or 1. And just to restate what my tiers mean, tier 1 is the best deck or best decks. They only care about each other. Tier 1.5 are decks that could be tier 1, however, they're so heavily gatekept by tier 1, Numemon, that they can't really breach that threshold. The decks to be looking out for is for Blue Hybrid, Imperial, and Dexdoru. I think these decks have the highest chance to pop into tier 1. Mirage just has a fucking awful matchup, and a Numemon is just hard. Same thing with Magnemon, it gets more bad matchups. So, and yeah, guys, I hope you guys like my tier list. I didn't go too in depth with this one because it's, it's my thoughts about what the meta will be. And I'm going to be making another one once we get more testing, once we get results, and once regionals start popping off. I am going to a lot of regionals in September. So I hope to see you guys around. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to put it down below. Catch you later.